This is the new 2024 Fiat 500e, but this is a retro review. And about 10 years ago, before the new one came out, Fiat had this car that they imported into the United States. It's the original Fiat 500 500e. And this was basically a California compliance car. In other words, it was meant to appease, I guess, the laws in California that stated that a certain percentage of a manufacturer's cars had to be electric. And I think it was my favorite California compliance car, not just because it's orange, which I love, but because it had that kind of charm and friendliness and quick-wittedness that you want out of an electric EV. Now, what made it unique, of course, was that it had a small battery. I think it was 24 kilowatt hours back in the day, which gave it only a range of about 87 miles, if I remember right. But to make up for that, it came in a bunch of cool colors, including this orange. I think there was like a Tiffany blue, and maybe there's a black one, if I recall. I got to drive this on the program in San Francisco, and one of the original things that made it kind of unique was this dimple design. And the reason for that was, well, like a golf ball, it's supposed to be more aero, but with 80 plus miles of range, I'm not sure that actually did much, but it did make the car look pretty cool. So in this review, we're going to do a TFL retro review, and we're going to take it for a quick ride and see how much range has improved over the decade, I guess. That one, 150 miles of range. This one, about half of it. Now this car is 2 inches shorter, 2 inches narrower, and actually 2 inches and 1 inch less tall, but it still, has this very traditional compact design with the charger underneath there, and foldable seats, because the back seat really doesn't fit anybody with feet, at least not if you're my height at 6'2". But you gotta love this kind of orange-white color combination. It reminds me of when I was a kid. It reminds me of what are those, Ian, what are those orange popsicles called? Dreamsicles. Dreamsicles, thank you. It reminds me of a dreamsicle. So come on in, Ian, let's go for a ride. Now, I remember when I went on the program for this, and they only sold it in California and eventually in Oregon. And I always thought that was a shame, because you could lease it for something like $99 a month with no money down. I mean, that's less than a cell phone to actually have, a car that can take you to work and back, and then have enough range over to probably make it up your driveway. Just kidding, but actually true. Inside, it's just as charming as on the outside. You've got this kind of white cladding that amplifies the look from the outside. We have a sunroof. We have traditional, well, back then it was FCA, now it's Stellantis controls. A little tiny screen, buttons for everything. Remember when you could actually control a fan speed like that without having to go into a touch screen? A relatively, dare I say, much simplified gear selector. There are no gears, but okay, I got to turn the key, sorry. Okay, drive. All right, there we go. Window switches, and enough room for somebody who's 6'2", as long as you don't crab me in the back. Now, if I recall, this had 111 horsepower and a quoted 0 to 60 time of 8.5 seconds. The new one that we're passing has 118 horsepower and 8.4 seconds 0 to 60. So we have, well, 0.1 of a second quicker. Yeah, that's progress. I'm kidding, of course. What is progress is the fact that the new one has almost double the amount of range. Anyway, this was only sold in California and Oregon, but now you can buy these around the country. One that's really been kind of used up and has a lot of miles on it, and this one only has 1,665 miles. That's because it belongs to Fiat. But one that is kind of roached and batteries kind of shot on, probably about $5,000, all the way up to maybe $15,000 for this car if you wanted, one that's in good shape and much fewer miles, or much less miles than this vehicle. So let's see how this drives compared to today, I'm trying to find the volume knob. Where's the volume knob? There's a radio somewhere. There it is. Oh, oh, look at that. It's a real knob. Duh. I've gotten so used to having sliders and all kinds of different switchgear that's hidden in the screen that I completely missed the volume knob. All right, so we're going to get it out on the road here and give it the beans. Oh, look at that. A little bit of wheel squeal. I think we're rolling on 15s. And the cool thing about these cars is they were set up to go be very quick from like 0 to 30, and then not as quick from 30 to 60 because they were basically city cars. And that's why when I went on the program, it was in San Francisco, right? This is kind of the natural home of a small electric vehicle. I'm here in Miami. And same thing, right? Tight parking spaces, a lot of cars, a lot of stop and go traffic, which is what electric cars excel at. And, you know, a tidy little package. Of course, back in the day, they also made this as a regular gasoline-powered car, and there was even a Barth version of it that sounded magnificent for a little four-cylinder turbo. But this was kind of the one I wanted because it was unique and unusual and basically cutting-edge technology. I think the one I drove was maybe a 2016, something like that. If I recall right, maybe 2015. And, you know, California forced a lot of these compliance cars, and the price eventually ended up reflecting the fact that this was a car that the market didn't want, but the government demanded. And that's always, of course, the problem when you have government putting its finger on the scales. At the end of the day, it's not about what people want, but it's about what the government wants, and that's why things become cheap, and in some ways maybe unfairly cheap, because it's a really good little car. Now, we owned the first electric Mini, which was the Mini SE, and that was very similar to this, competed directly against it. That one had 104 miles of range and a 50 kilowatt charger. I'm not sure this even had fast charging. I think it just had level 2. And I don't recall what the charge rate was, but I'm guessing, you know, if you plugged it into your wall outlet, it would take probably all day and all night to charge it. If you had a level 2, you might be able to charge it in, you know, 6 hours or less. But it's not about that, is it? If you want a second, you know, obviously this is not a car you're going to road trip. We tried to road trip the Mini, and that ended up being, well, a bit of a train wreck. Basically, we would drive an hour and charge an hour. So, you know, if you wanted this to go visit grandma's house a couple of towns over, not a good vehicle for that. But if you wanted it just to zip around town to go get some lunch or do some errands, I couldn't think of a better vehicle. Okay, maybe that Bentley right there, Ian. Yeah, that might be a better vehicle. Speaking of Fiat 500s, look at that. Yeah, that's the gas one. But the thing about these little Cinquecentos is that the very first one came out in 1957. The original Mini came out in 1959. And so Fiat will tell you that they actually invented the city car and got, you know, Fiat back on its feet and moving after the Second World War. And it's probably hard to argue that. And I still love this little car today. Obviously, you need at least, 300 miles of range for something to be useful in terms of an EV, at least if you want to use it as your main everyday driver. But if you need a car that's just something you'll drive to work and back and, you know, feel very special in driving, this isn't a bad choice. And I hope you've enjoyed this TFL retro review. It's been more fun for me probably than for you, but I'm really psyched to be able to drive this. And remember, if you want to see more reviews over at TFL, head over to alltfl.com, where we'll, you know, do retro reviews on EVs. Who would have thunk? Here we are, 2024, and we're doing retro reviews on EVs. Time has changed. See you guys next time. Ciao.